The selfie is basically the visual epitome of harmless fun. Capturing an adorable selfie with your pet is even better, and it's something that all your friends and family love to see. So why not start snapping away when the opportunity presents itself? What would you do, however, if you snapped an adorable picture with your four-legged friend only to have it land you in hot water with the law? Well, that's exactly what happened to one Michigan man named Dan Tillery. After posting a selfie with his bulldog, Dan was shocked to find police at the doorstep of his home just days later. The reason why will infuriate you. Pet owners love snapping selfies with their adorable four-legged pals. Capturing a precious moment with your pet on camera is always a great experience, but what if it got you in trouble with the law? That's exactly what happened to one Michigan man after he took a selfie with his adorable bulldog named Diggy. Musician Dan Tillery of Michigan's Waterford Township always knew that he wanted a dog, but the apartments that he rented unfortunately never allowed them. Luckily, that all changed in June 2016. Finally, after years of working in music studios and holding down side jobs to save up money, Dan and his girlfriend, Megan, had enough cash to buy a home of their own. Now, they would be able to get the dog they always wanted, but they had no idea the trouble they'd soon face. After the pair settled into their new place, Dan found just the dog he wanted to adopt, 2-year-old American Bulldog Sir Wiggleton from the Detroit Dog Rescue. Right away, he knew this was the dog for him. Sir Wiggleton was found wandering the streets of Detroit and he was picked up by rescue workers from the Detroit Dog Rescue. After that, he'd remained there, unadopted, for about 100 days before Dan discovered him. It was actually this exact picture that Dan fell in love with so much. After seeing this big goofy face, Dan knew Sir Wiggleton's personality would match up perfectly with his own. Dan adopted him as soon as he could and renamed his new pooch Diggy. Dan and Diggy became best friends almost immediately, and Megan fell in love with the bulldog too. He had such a fun-loving attitude about him, and he was always up for any adventure with Dan and Megan. Dan would frequently bring Diggy on long car trips with friends. Diggy loved the outdoors, and he especially enjoyed being in the company of his new human owners and their friends. He was truly one cool canine. As pet owners typically do, Dan started taking adorable selfies with Diggy and posting them to his social media pages. People all over the internet were absolutely infatuated with Diggy's adorable face, and he began getting a lot of online attention. Dan was so thrilled with his new adopted pal that he shared a photograph on the Facebook page of Detroit Dog Rescue to thank them for their hard work and to talk about the joys of adopting an animal. This picture, however, would bring Dan lots of trouble. For the next few days after Dan posted his picture on the Detroit Dog Rescue page, Diggy's internet popularity just kept growing. Within 24 hours, the photo had over 24,000 likes. Dan couldn't believe what was happening. Dan also started receiving private messages on his social media pages and calls from media outlets who wanted to talk about Diggy and the traction he was gaining online. All of the sudden attention, while welcomed, was slightly overwhelming. Dan was trying his best to bask in the newfound attention he and Diggy were receiving. Other than having his Facebook page flooded with fan messages, he really saw no downside to Diggy's growing online presence. That is, until the local police knocked on his door just a few days later. Dan was startled by the presence of the officers. They proceeded to inform him that owning Diggy was in direct violation of Waterford's ban on owning pit bulls and pit bull mixes. Dan was left horrified by this development. Would he have to give up his best friend? According to the township, pit bulls were deemed dangerous dogs, and no one who lived within the township's perimeters was allowed to own one. It didn't matter how friendly they were or if they had a clean history. Dan figured the officers would let him off with just a warning, but he was wrong. The officers told him he needed to return Diggy to the Detroit Dog Rescue or else he'd have to pay a hefty fine, or worse. Dan was heartbroken by the ultimatum. Even though Diggy's adoption papers stated he was an American Bulldog, the officers thought he looked too much like a pit bull, so they decided he was one. This eye test was a completely unfair assessment, but there was really nothing Dan could do about it. Dan took to social media about his problem, and he was immediately met with an astounding wave of support from animal activists and fellow dog owners. People were outraged that the police had stripped a responsible pet owner of his new pal. Dan prepared to fight the battle in court, and he was ready to win. Dan's lawyer had a pretty simple defense: his dog wasn't a pit bull even though he looked like one. But Dan's goal wasn't just to retain ownership of his own dog. He also wanted the township to lift the pit bull ban altogether. Dan's petition pleading with the court to let him keep Diggy gained more than 100,000 signatures. Finally, after a heated debate that lasted months, Waterford agreed to not only let Dan keep Diggy, but they also changed the pit bull ban as well. It was an amazing victory for pet owners everywhere, but especially for Dan, Megan, and the incredible Diggy. What a great ending to a story. It's such a shame that certain breeds of dogs are frowned upon even if they're super friendly. Way to set a precedent, Diggy. Share this inspiring story with your friends.